Parable is defined by C.H. Dodd as a metaphor or a simile drawn from nature or common life, arresting the hearer by its vividness or strangeness, and leaving the mind in sufficient doubt of its precise application to tease it into active thought. C.H. Dodd was a New Testament scholar and proponent of realized eschatology, which refers to Jesus' ministry as being significant for the present, for now, and not for the abstract, for the end of the world through destruction, but for the rebirth of the world through the process of becoming. The process of becoming by the actions of Jesus' disciples, us. From the Gospel today, we hear the parable of the sower, or maybe better titled, the parable of the ground. I don't particularly like this parable in Matthew, not because of the parable itself, but because of Matthew's explanation that he put with it, that the community, the Macon community, put with it. And the Revised Common Lectionary that we use includes the explanation of the parable. And it's been known for a long time that that explanation was added by the early church. That explanation has been easy for many communities to use this parable with Matthew's explanation as a finger-pointing exercise of we who are equivalent to good soil versus those who are in the rocky soil, or whose lives are in brambles and thus nothing good can come from them. But Matthew's explanation of the parable was, again, for the Macon community that consisted of Jews that were Christians, and Gentile Christians. And it was a takeover of the parable by this community of believers to explain why not all Jews believed. A sower spreads his seeds of grain everywhere without being cheap, without worrying about losing some of it among the rocks and the brambles, without worrying about the birds picking at it. The sower is spreading the possibility of life. When the conditions are right for germination, the seed opens. It dies. The seed dies, but gives way to the seedling. The seed is no more, but the seedling lives and becomes the plant. Now some of the seeds germinated in shallow ground among the rocks, and the sun took them away. Some germinated among the well-established, tough, seasoned brambles, like the ones I have all around my house. They were shaded, and the seedlings were choked out. And some didn't germinate at all because they were eaten by the birds. The cost of doing business with the earth. Then there were those seeds that germinated in the right spots and became the forebears of more seeds of life. I believe this parable is about us as individuals. Some days we are the rocky ground, and it appears that maybe nothing good springs up from us on those days. Some days we are the unintended seed that feeds others, unbeknownst to us. Some days we are caught in the brambles through our own fault or the fault of others, and we feel like we are suffocated. But even there in the brambles, there is hope. Now, I was a member of the FFA, Future Farmers of America, in high school. I got my pen, but I never got those great little blue jackets with FFA on the back. Those corduroy jackets. I know some of you know what I'm talking about. Now, I was only a member for one semester. I wanted to join so I could work in the greenhouse. It seemed like it might be a fun place. And I did live on a farm. But at the end of the semester, the spring semester, the FFA teacher gave us all some seedlings. And I got some broccoli seedlings. So it's already summer by the time school's out. And broccoli plants, as many of you know, are cold weather plants. They're not going to do anything in the summer. It was quickly becoming too hot. But they were my seedlings. So I asked my mom if I could plant them in her garden. And as I alluded to this before, my mom meant business with her garden. That it fed us. Through the fall and winter, it fed us. So letting me plant something in her garden was a big deal. So she gave me the corner of the garden that she was going to let lie fallow for this season. So I planted them there, but I really hated the garden work. I mean, I really hated it. I could do yard work all day. But stepping over into that dirt, it was a whole different world. I hated it. So I forgot about the seedlings. I mean, I certainly wasn't going to do any weeding. So the weeds took it over. There was nothing else was planted there. And it was covered in those wild morning glory vines and all the weeds you can think of. They took it over. And I thought, well, they're gone. They're dead, like we thought they were going to be. So one day in the late summer, I was forced to work in the garden. Literally forced to work in the garden. So my slow, complaining teenage self happened to be over near the abandoned corner of the garden. And I looked into the weed patch. And I noticed something strange I'd never seen grow in our garden before. It was broccoli heads. It appears that the weeds had protected the broccoli plants from the hot sun and allowed the plants to mature. And that night, we had fresh broccoli. Due to no work on my part. Well, my mother had to go in and gather them because those prickly vines were just too much for my sensitive skin. But that's what came to mind. It always comes to my mind as I read this parable. And so with all that in mind, here's my attempt at some prose, some poetry concerning this parable. It could be deemed heretical. And you will probably like it because of it. Or not. Matthew's parable of the sower grieves me some. Not because of the sower touching the earth and the earth responding. That is a delight. But because of Matthew himself, who decided to confine the seeds for his own community. A necessity thought wise for that time of conflict, and maybe so. The parable of the sower is about love, which knows no confines. As Christ says, the Spirit glows from where and to we do not know, and such is love. As a dandelion spreads her seeds on the wind, they fall where they may, and God sees them fall, a bane to the lawnsman, but a smile to God. The parable of the sower is about God's abundance and God's care for the birds, the rocks, and the brambles. God sows with God's arm, the arm being the Word. With the Word, God sows love. God sows it everywhere. Sometimes it takes root. It's easy for some with big, broken, open hearts, and the love is multiplied. The soil is deep and rich, not because of what we do to the soil, but because of circumstance. For some, it isn't quite so easy. Circumstance of living among the rocks or in the shade of brambles have made it close to impossible to grow love there. But love is sown there anyway. And love sown, no matter where or for whom, is always intended for those who will partake of the generous banquet. Be they birds or humans, the banquet provided by the seeds of love intended for the rebirth of creation. Love blooms from the unlikeliest places at the unlikeliest times. Is love lost that does not bloom? No. It enriches the earth for the next seed of love that falls there. For God is always sowing love and sowing it richly. Amen.